All right, guys, I guess it's just me tonight. So I'm just going to do a quick recording. Tonight, I wanted to chat about the difference between flexibility and mobility. In December, I talked for 2 to 3 weeks on flexibility and becoming flexible. And then I wanted to touch a little bit this month on mobility and what is the difference between flexibility and mobility. And really, they kind of go hand in hand. You really need flexibility to work with your mobility, but I wanted to separate the two so you can kind of get an idea of what the definition is of each one and then how they work together. So flexibility is really the ability of your muscle to be lengthened. So if I asked you to bend over and touch your toes, we're really testing the ability of your the length of your hamstring. Sorry, I just had like a train of thought, wondering if I'm actually on the right Zoom call. I'm wondering if I clicked the right link. I think I did. Anyways, the flexibility is if I ask you to touch your toes, we're testing the ability of your hamstring to be lengthened. How well can it lengthen? If it's really tight, you're going to feel tightness, which means that it's not going to lengthen. It's not lengthening very well. I totally lost my train of thought because now I have two thoughts going on in my head. Mobility is the ability to control your movement through a range of motion. Another way it can be thought of is mobility is the ability of a joint to move through a range of motion. So here's an example, because some people have a hard time understanding what that means, the definition of mobility. So the ability of a joint to move through its full range of motion would be something like this. Is if I'm going to test my shoulder mobility, ideally we want our arm, I'm going to bring my arm up and I'm going to rotate my shoulder all the way up. And ideally I'm going to want my arm to be right next to my ear, which would be considered, good range of motion, good mobility. So if I move it up, I actually get stuck right there. So you can see my ear is right here and my arm's not going up very far. So if I try to compensate, hi, Kristen, I'm talking to myself because nobody else jumped on, so I'm just recording mobility movement. So you can listen in, I'm just talking. So I'm talking about mobility and flexibility, the difference between flexibility and mobility. So flexibility, I'm sure as you know, is lengthening of a muscle, right? Mobility is the ability to move a joint in its full range of motion. So if I was to ask you to bend over and touch your toes, we're testing out your flexibility in your hamstrings. If I asked you to raise your arm up over your head, trying to get it as straight as possible, I'm testing your mobility of your shoulder, right? Range of motion. Yeah. So if my current range of motion in my shoulder is not the greatest. So if I go right here, I kind of get stuck. I feel tightness right here. And you can see that there is an angle in my shoulder all the way down my arm. Ideally, we want that to be right here. But in order for me to get here, I have to compensate kind of by arching to get that full range of motion, which is not ideal, which means that my mobility in my shoulders is not the greatest. I can't get a full range of motion in my shoulder because there's lack of flexibility in certain areas and tightness in certain areas. So there's different ways that we can test different joints. Another good test for shoulders and chest would be trying to touch our fingertips. You ever tried that one?
I'm going to try it right now. You won't be able to see me.
So that is going to kind of test the front of our shoulder mobility.
Okay. Mine's not good at all.
So one side you might find is tighter than the other. So if you do, left arm overhead, then switch and do right arm overhead, you might find one side is tighter than the other. These are just some really good tests to do.
I can't even touch my fingertips.
Okay. So that is just something that now that, you could work on. And usually it's a tightness in the front of the shoulders, right? We end up getting tight here. So I'm
a side sleeper.
Oh, me too. Me too, which is the worst because it really puts us like in this like
Yeah.
front tight position. Yeah.
I've tried to get myself to be a back sleeper, and it's just really difficult to stay on my back.
I try to start my night out sleeping on my back, but when I wake up, I find myself on my side.
Yeah.
It's just where I'm comfortable. If I'm really tired and not sleeping well, I'll find myself on my stomach, which then is really hard because like my neck then is cranked to one side, and
Yeah.
one side will then end up being tighter than the other, and that's not ideal either. So yeah, the way we sleep really does affect the tightness in our shoulders. Could cause some shoulder issues too. I've heard some people have pain when they sleep on their shoulders because maybe they have some inflammation going on in there, which is kind of
Right.
not fun.
No.
So another test that you could do for, let's say, ankle mobility would be if you take your fist and you put it up against a wall, and then you put your foot, so you use your fist as kind of like a measuring. I'm going to see if I can do this here. I put you down on the floor because I have a wall right here. So if I take my fist and I put my foot up to my fist, okay? So now I'm a fist length away from the wall. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to touch my knee to the wall.
Okay.
So I'm going to hinge forward. And my heel wants to come up just a little bit. I know the lighting's not the greatest, but my heel wants to come up just a little bit on this side. So it's a little bit tight in my calf, but otherwise I have fairly good mobility on that side. Could use some work. Here, I'm going to test my right side. This side is a lot better. So one side is usually more mobile than the other, but that's a way that you can test your ankle mobility. Another test could be like your thoracic rotation. So if you sit in a chair and you cross your arms and then you twist the other way. I forget what it is. I believe it's a 45-degree angle that you want to end up being at. So if you think of here as like a 90-degree angle, right? If you can try and turn at least to a 45, it would be ideal. It takes a lot of work for me to get there. My back is super tight. Ideally, you want to sit, but from here, and I just twist. Twisting to my left is a lot tighter than my right. So I could use some work in the thoracic, even in my lumbar spine, trying to get that to twist just a little bit more because I feel tightness in like my lower back. So these are just some good tests that you can do, just kind of like, okay, where do I feel tightness? Where could I work on lengthening some muscles? Because that's where your flexibility is going to come in. But then also working the muscles around the joint to where I can get into full range of motion. So mobility comes into play, especially if you're strength training. You want good mobility so that way you can also have good control. So strength training is going to help with control. It's going to help with, let's say I have two people. I have one person who has really good mobility and they're strong. They can back squat 200 pounds, no problem. They can go down past parallel. So their hips can go down past their knees, right? That's below parallel. Let's say I have an individual who's very flexible, but not very strong. And they can body, their body weight, just body squat, air squat below parallel. But if I was to add weight, 100 pounds on a barbell on their back, they wouldn't be able to go down very far because one, they lack strength and maybe they lack mobility. So strength will help mobility. It will help with core strength. It will help with your range of motion. One thing that I really love about strength training is really moving slow and working on proper form, because the more you do it, the more your body will get accustomed to being in those positions. But moving well and moving at a slower pace is going to be more beneficial than trying to rush through your movement. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I always like to have people practice without weight, practice your squats. How low can you go? Can you get lower? Where do you feel the tightness? Because throwing on weight, sometimes there's some individuals who can actually squat in a better position with weight because the weight kind of puts them a little more balanced. I'm thinking like in a front squat. Like for me, I can have a really pretty front squat because the weight is balancing me in the front. Because otherwise, if I take the weight off and I try to squat really low, I want to fall. I'll end up wanting to fall backwards because I don't have the greatest ankle mobility. But if I have the weight in front, but if I have the weight in front of me, then I can squat really low because I'm balanced. I have weight in the front and I'm not going to fall backwards because that weight's holding me. But that's not really ideal. I'm going to end up compensating elsewhere because my ankles aren't the greatest. So that somewhere else is compensating for my lack of ankle mobility. So that's just something to keep in mind. Like with my shoulders, if I don't have the greatest shoulder mobility, so if I do overhead press, I have to be very mindful not to arch my back. Because if I can't get my arm straight up where it needs to be, where I know it's supposed to be, subconsciously my body's going to compensate for that, and it's going to create an arch to get where it needs to go. And that's not good because now I'm putting more stress on my spine, right? But this is where moving slow and mindful really, really comes in, is going to be super beneficial. So we know how to move properly and make sure that we're not compensating anywhere else that's going to, cause issues down the road. So,
I'm definitely in my ankle mobility.
Well, and okay, so I'm sure a lot of us have rolled our ankles, sprained our ankles, maybe even broken our ankles. And so unfortunately, that is really going to hinder mobility because we get scar tissue in there. And so I know so many people where they have either wrist or ankle mobility issues because of we fall, right? We catch ourselves, we roll our ankles. And so that scar tissue is built up. So we're not able to, bend back far enough, or so push-ups really hurt, trying to get into a front squat position.
This is my maximum mobility in my right wrist.
And you did you break a toe, or what did you see?
I broke my big toe.
You broke your big toe.
Fitme weekend.
Right. I remember that. So it's just, we don't really realize how much, our mobility comes into play until you start doing strength training. And then you realize, and a lot of people is like, oh, I'm just not flexible. Well, maybe you are more flexible than you realize, but maybe it's the mobility part that is lacking that needs to be worked on. But they do go hand in hand. Your dog in the back is super cute. I see him peeking.
My dog? Or whose dog?
Her dog.
Oh, okay.
Her dog.
Oh.
He's just sitting back there, just chilling. So cute. So some of the things to help with mobility too is if you have a foam roller, foam roll some tight areas like your thoracic, your quads, the insides of your inner thighs, kind of up around close to your knee, kind of hitting those tender areas, but the areas that could limit mobility. Your calves would be ideal to roll out. I'm not really good at foam rolling. I need to do it more often. What else? A lacrosse ball. If you have a tennis ball or a lacrosse ball, which I have one around here somewhere, it rolled under my bed, but I have a lacrosse ball. This is really good too for working on mobility and just kind of working in some tight spots, especially around your shoulder area. So I like to go up against the wall, and I'll take this and I'll stick it kind of in my lats or kind of right behind my shoulder. And then I'll just press up against it on the wall. And if you have not the greatest shoulder mobility like I do, it'll probably be really, really tender in that area. So you just kind of have to play with it, with the pressure, make sure you're not overdoing it. hitting your traps. So while you're on the wall, you can take it and kind of hit the upper trap area and roll around. You can mobilize your shoulder. Kristen, while you're doing that, you can take this, kind of hold it there, and you can rotate your arm up and down. Kind of gives it a little bit more of a massage. Might be uncomfortable. This thing is actually really good because it's small enough you can get into the tiny muscle areas that you may not be able to get with stretching. Good for the hips. If you have plantar fasciitis, this is good for rolling out the bottoms of your feet, especially if you get tight. If you get plantar fasciitis, roll out your calves and the bottoms of your feet with this. It helps tremendously. What else? Your shins. A lot of people don't think about the shins, but the muscle that goes right along your shin bone, it can be really, really tight. You can take this and kind of roll down your shins. There's so many things you could do with this. It's kind of like a mini torture device because it can be very uncomfortable, but it's super good. What else? I think that's it. Do you have any questions about mobility, like ways to test or things to do to increase mobility? Any areas that you struggle with?
My feet, basically. I've been really slacking in my pre-walk mobility exercises. I used to do a real good regimen that Sandy B gave me, and then I just kind of threw it to the wayside, and because I had to add some other exercises to help with my back and my neck.
Mm-hmm.
And it just kind of got, and now I'm just like barely rolling out of bed to get my walk in the morning.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that I think a lot of us struggle with is taking the time to do any stretching or mobility work or even a good dynamic warm-up. Like I'm guilty of not doing a proper dynamic warm-up. I think I might do one for maybe a couple minutes, but I know for my body personally, like it needs a little more than just a couple minutes of warming up, you know?
Yeah.
I especially where I live, it's really cold. Going out to my garage this morning was like 48 degrees. So I feel like I should be doing more of a warm up just to get that blood flowing even more. But yeah, I totally hear you, Kristen. It's like we go good for a while and then something comes up and now it's like, I just got to go get my walk done, or, I just got to go get my workout done. And we skip some of those important pieces. So I totally hear you.
Yeah.
The movements that Sandy gave you, how long did it normally take you to do?
I think it was only like, I think I had it down to 15 minutes.
Okay, that's not too bad.
Which wasn't bad, but then when you add in my back and my lower back and my neck, it just was taking like 45 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, damn, I don't have that much time.
Yeah.
And even when I did, then I started getting lazy and frustrated that it was taking so long that I think I must have thrown the baby out with the bathwater. And now I'm like this morning, I barely got out of bed, and with enough time, I almost skipped my walk because I was only starting my walk right when I normally would stop it.
Gotcha.
So I ended up skipping breakfast in order to get my walk.
Gotcha.
But I didn't skip calories. I drank a protein drink and I ate a protein bar. So that kept the hungries away.
Mhm.
But it wasn't Fitme. It wasn't even Fitme inspired.
It's funny how it has that domino effect though, huh? Like,
Yeah.
you get up later, so therefore you're sacrificing little things in your morning.
Yeah.
What if you did, so this is just a suggestion because I
Mhm.
totally feel you, like I feel like we only have we have a small attention span, especially when it comes to stretching and mobility work.
Yeah.
And so if you felt like 15 minutes was ideal, like could you do 15 minutes of your neck and back work on one day, and then the next day do
Right.
15 minutes of your whatever Sandy gave you for like pre-walking?
Right.
Could you do like every
Yeah.
other day, like different
Yeah.
body
I could
areas?
probably rotate it like I would a workout.
Mhm. Because I, for the longest time, felt like I had to stretch everything from head to toe. And it
Yeah.
would take like 45 minutes to an hour. And I would
Yeah.
just get frustrated and then I would just stop doing it.
Yeah.
Um, and I think kind of like with anything else, whether it's with workouts or food, we have to take it into smaller chunks, like bite-sized pieces.
Yeah.
So that way it's manageable and
Yeah.
sustainable. Like 45 minutes of stretching is not so sustainable for the majority of people,
No.
so maybe if we did like 10 to 15 minutes, I mean, geez, it's better than nothing. It's like going for a walk,
Yeah.
5 minutes
Yeah.
is better than nothing.
Right. Yeah. I've got a 15-minute walk today, and normally I would at least get a half an hour.
Yeah.
But most of the time lately, when I was getting my good walk in, I was getting closer to an hour of walk.
Mm.
But
Mhm.
again, it's all balance.
Mhm.
Do I need to walk for a whole hour? No. If I can get at least a half an hour walk in, I'd be happier than a 15-minute walk.
Right. Right. And and it's kind of that all or nothing mindset. It's like, it's okay if it's not an hour. 30 minutes
Right.
is better than, 5
Right.
minutes. 5 minutes is
Yeah.
better than nothing. It's really just that mindset, that mind game of thinking that we have to do 30 minutes. We have to do
Right.
45 minutes. You really don't.
Yeah.
Like, sure, work up to it. And on the days you
Yeah.
can do it, do it. But if there's days
Yeah.
where you just can't do it, that's okay. Do what you can.
Yeah. I think for me, like, it was sort of a numbers game.
Mm.
I was um once my foot had recovered enough from breaking my toe, when I was able to get 2 miles in,
Mhm.
then I was just like, oh, then when the ugly sweater 5K thing came up, then I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna try and get 5 mile or 3 miles,
Mhm.
the 5K. And then I was just like, all right, well, hey, I can do the 5K a lot more frequently. But then I realized it's taking me a whole hour.
Mm.
But then I'd feel cheated if I didn't get my 5K. But I'm like, it's balance. I've got to say, and so like this morning, I literally almost skipped my walk entirely, but I knew that for my own self-esteem, my sanity, I needed to get that at least 2 laps around the circle.
Mhm.
And it took 15 minutes. So I was just like, all right, that's better than not doing it at all.
Yeah. There's still a sense of accomplishment. Like even if it's not as long as you like there's still a sense of like,
Yeah.
okay, I did it.
I made myself do it.
Mhm. And that's the part. It's like you didn't
Yeah.
want to do it, but you did it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's really true, that saying of, no one ever regrets a workout. No one ever gets done with a workout and says, I wish I didn't do that. It's just trying to get yourself to do it is
Yeah.
is the hardest part for most people.
Yeah.
And you're right. It's a numbers game. It's a mind game. It's just kind of trying to trick yourself into saying like, let's just go do this.
Yeah.
and maybe not worry so much about numbers, you know.
Right. And lately for me, I'm probably, I'll be quite honest, I'm probably not going to even try to do my mobility exercises tomorrow or the next few days, because I'm trying to get myself back into the habit of getting my walk in the morning before work.
And that's totally okay. You like I said, take it in bite-sized pieces. And if that means starting with walking and working your way backwards of like, let's get back in the habit of walking. And once you're comfortable and solid in that, then start adding, you know, 10 minutes of mobility prep. Just work backwards. That's totally fine.
Yeah. I liked Christy's goal setting for breaking it down into a month at a time. Because this month I'm going to work on my walking at least 5 days a week, and my water goal at least 5 days a week.
Good.
For the month of January.
Yeah, I like the month at a time. Again, it just seems more doable than thinking 12 months at a time or 6 months at a time or even 3 months at a time. Like 1 month at a time is more mentally doable in our minds than bigger chunks.
Yeah. And my goal for the year is I really want to get back. I want to lose 30 pounds because I gained that much this year, just in the last few months.
It's a good goal.
And I'm pretty sure it's hormonal, but it's also been diet and water, not doing everything that I needed to.
Right. Yeah. Well, good. I like your plan.
Yeah.
It's a good laid out plan. It's good. Isla, are you walking your pup? Yeah. I'm glad you guys have good weather to go out, be outside. It's been so cold here. I go outside, but you can't be out too long because we're getting like, I think Wednesday it's like supposed to be -5 with wind chill. It's like -10. So we can't be out, you know, too long. Otherwise you get like frostbite.
Yeah.
So, I have a treadmill. I could walk indoors, but it's not the same.
At least you've got a treadmill. I have an elliptical and that's no fun.
Oh, yeah. I think Isla has an elliptical too. She's got.
I'd rather be on the treadmill.
Yeah. Well, ladies, it was good chatting with you. Thanks for hopping on.
Hey, I'm just glad I did.
Have a great week, and I will see you ladies next week.
All right. Have a good one.
You too.
Bye-bye.